Warning, videos by Billy Alsbrooks do cause side effects. And those side effects are champions being born, dreams being realized, the weak becoming strong, weight loss, victory over unbelievable odds, incredible comeback stories, the sick being healed, marriages being restored, victory over all forms of addiction, job promotions, average people becoming millionaires, warriors becoming blessed and unstoppable. These videos will motivate and inspire you to take action. Warning, your faith is now being increased to the level it takes to move mountains. Arise, champion. I'm Billy Alsbrooks and I approve this message. Let us not grow weary while doing good, for in due season we shall reap if we do not lose heart. Now, the crown of victory must be seized by persistence. Champions understand that the secret to success is refusing to give up. Today, I will be teaching about the law of persistence. Now let's look at the definition of persistence. The fact of continuing in an opinion or course of action in spite of difficulty or opposition. Class is in session, and I'm gonna break this law of persistence down into 5 points for you to understand. If you truly grasp and apply this principle, you will be unstoppable. Persistence is to consistently apply pressure with the corresponding actions required to produce success. Now the way you apply pressure is you grind until the world folds under your demands. Champions don't negotiate with the world. There's only one outcome, and that's the outcome they believe for, and they ain't settling for nothing less. They ain't no halfway victory, no halfway healing, no halfway championship, ain't no halfway legend. You gotta go all in, 120 beast mode, all the way. That's it. That's the identity of a champ. The first thing I want you to understand is the foundation that persistence rests upon, and that's a mindset. A mindset that believes with God, all things are possible. Now let's go to the word. Joshua 1:5 says, no one will be able to stand against you all the days of your life. As I was with Moses, so I will be with you. I will never leave you nor forsake you. So whatever situation, trial or tribulation that you are facing, understand this, you are not alone. Now we persist not in faith of our own ability, but in that of the God that we serve. You've heard me say this before, that destiny is obligated by universal law to concede to the demands of unwavering faith. And long-term persistence requires steadfast, unwavering, and immovable faith. You seize the promised land. You seize the healing. You seize the victory by faith. Persistence is faith sustained. It's faith proven day in and day out. Belief walked out. We are incapable of sustaining the persistence required for victory on our own. But our faith is the game changer, because it invites in God to our situation, and in His presence we find the strength needed to press on, to keep going, to keep fighting. Now understand this, breakthroughs are always available to those willing to think in a way that will allow them to manifest. You have to put your mind in an environment conducive to success and keep it there. The way you respond in the moment of trial will ultimately define you. Now remember, failure is not an option, because greater is He that is in you than he that is in the world. Now the second point to persistence is to get a vision for where you're headed. Because you can't persist moving towards something if you don't know where you're going. You gotta see that victory in your mind. Vision is the genesis of all greatness. You build success one brick at a time in your mind. When the mind truly accepts the dream, the unseen will become seen. Your mind is the factory, and your dream is the product, and your grind is the worker that assembles it all together, and your persistence is your marketing. Now you are the Picasso, the painter, the artist. Your mind is the blank canvas. Your thoughts are the paintbrush. Now you pick up that paintbrush and you paint the victory. Where there is no vision, the people perish, right? So what I want you to do is unleash your imagination. Your imagination is powerful. victory has always been there. But for the unseen to become seen, one must grab the dream with both hands and refuse to let go. And just like Jacob wrestled with the angel, you gotta wrestle with that dream and refuse to let go until it becomes a reality. Your faith must create an inner stillness during the gestation period. This is what the word says when it says, peace, be still, and know that I am God. God will take care of it. Your job is to stay in faith for the dream, believe for the promise. Don't get shaken out of your dream by the senses, by what you see on the outside, the external world. Cause the external always bows down to the internal. The mental, the thinking dictates the environment. And the word says, be not conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. The transformative power is the thinking. The only thought should be victory. Your body is the temple, your mind is the altar, and your thinking is the worship. Now what God are you serving with your thinking? Now point 3 is understanding the power created through persistence. See, by persistently focusing on God's goodness, greatness, and glory, our faith is increased to a level that will move mountains. Persistence is a catalyst for transformation. It creates the power needed for change. The more you persist, the more pressure you apply upon the world for it to deliver what God has already promised. What the enemy don't want you to understand is that persistence lifts you out of the world of darkness and into the light. You see, persistence is the devil, the enemy, Satan's kryptonite. When you remain steadfast, when your faith is unwavering, you expose the lies of the enemy. You expose his nothingness. All the obstacles and illusions that stand in the way of the promises of God fade away and bow down to the warriors that refuse to give up. Now, to fully tap into the law of persistence, we must do point 4, which is examine the motives behind our persistence. Are we standing in faith for our will? Or are we standing in faith for God's will? The first thing we need to do is filter and verify everything that we are trusting God for through His Word. The Word is truth, and a disciplined mind rooted in truth can do the impossible. We always go back to the Word to make sure what we are doing is in line with God's will. God cannot bless something that contradicts His Word. It's against His nature. When alignment collides with persistence, miracles happen. I want you to remember this. The heart that persistence flows out of determines the outcome. So I ask you, are your motives righteous? Are they rooted in love? Are they aligned with the fruits of the Spirit? And if the answer to that is yes, then you have victory already. Because all the promises of God are yes and amen. And that brings us to point number 5, God's response to our persistence. Now let's go to the Word. 1 John 5:14-15. And this is the confidence that we have toward Him, that if we ask anything according to His will, He hears us. And if we know that He hears us in whatever we ask, we know that we have the request that we have asked for. Now see, God always honors the reacher. In exchange for our persistence, God gives us victory. Faith is the currency that miracles and victories are purchased with. All other currencies and forms of payments are denied. Faith is the only language spoken in heaven. All other languages are gibberish. Persistence is faith displayed, walked out day in and day out. It is the war cry of the believer. And God always hears His people. As long as you got breath in you, never ever give up. This is Billy Alsbrooks, and I am blessed and unstoppable. And to God be the glory. Grind City. Truth is the new black, the couture for greatness. Get your t-shirts now at blessedandunstoppable.com. Join the movement. At 12:30 a.m. on Tuesday, December 18th, 2007. I get a phone call, and it was my uncle. I knew it was kind of strange because I usually didn't talk to my uncle that often, and especially not at 12:30 a.m. But I picked up the phone, and my uncle said, "Billy, your daddy has had a stroke. He's been rushed to the hospital, and it's not good. So you need to come up here to Alabama and get up here as fast as you can." So I hung up the phone, my whole body shaking because this just hit me like a brick out of the blue. And I began to pack. And me and my wife and my little dog, Half Pint, we were in the car within 15 minutes, headed up the road on that 12-hour drive, not knowing what the outcome was gonna be. And we finally get up there that afternoon and we go straight to the hospital, and my dad is in the ICU. He can't move his right arm, can't move his right leg. When he tries to speak, it's incoherent, words all over the place that make absolutely no sense. And for the first time, I'm scared. I'm still shaking from that phone call that I got earlier. And I'm trying not to break down. I'm just in a daze. I'm in total shock because this was unexpected. My dad didn't have any health problems. He was 63, but he looked 43. And my grandparents were in the 80s and still alive and still healthy. So for this to happen to my dad, it just happened out of the blue, and I just wasn't ready for it. I thought I had 25 more years before I would have to deal with anything like this. And I guess it's just something that you just put in the back of your mind because you don't want to deal with it. And the ironic thing was, 2 days before this happened, I was at the bookstore looking for some books that would teach me how to make my mind a weapon, how to gain control of my thoughts. And here I was 2 days later, on the verge of losing my mind, the total opposite of what I had set out for. I tried to hold the tears back, at least while everybody else was around. I don't know if you can relate, but have you ever cried with one side of your face and not the other so that people couldn't see? Well, that's what I was doing. I tried to put on my game face, like I had it all under control. My mother and daddy raised me in positive thinking. So I was like, okay, I was trained for this moment. I'm not gonna let any negativity in. I'm not gonna believe in any other outcome but my dad getting up out of this hospital, and I'm gonna do whatever it takes to get him out. But that was running contrary to everything I was seeing, everything I was feeling, and everything those doctors were telling me. But it was just a roller coaster ride of emotions. I mean, 1 minute I'm strong in faith, and the next minute I'm face down on the hospital floor crying. But my mom and daddy raised me to believe in God, and I knew He existed up there. But at this point in time, I hadn't been to church in probably 20 years. But the foundation had been laid by my parents. And in this moment, my darkest hour, God introduced Himself. For the next 9 days, my father was plugged up to these machines, and his blood pressure was sky high. The doctors were worried he was gonna have another stroke. So I sat there next to him, looking at those machines for 20 hours a day. I prayed. I did everything. I spoke over him, nothing but life. I told him he was gonna get better. He didn't understand what had happened to him, but I just kept telling him, I'm gonna get you out of here. And each day, he got a little better, and a little better, and a little better. And 9 days later, they transferred him to a nursing home, a rehabilitation place where he could get physical therapy and start working on regaining control of his arm and leg again. I never will forget it. it's so vivid in my mind. Sunday, 12 days after he had had his stroke, the sun was out, so bright, the brightest I've ever seen it in my life. And as I'm driving over there to the nursing home, there's not a cloud in the sky. And I get to the room that day, and the doctor suggests that we should get him out of the bed, get him in a wheelchair, and roll him outside so he could see a little bit of that sunlight. So the nurse and I began to lift my dad up out of the bed and into the wheelchair. But what no one knew was that because my dad had lost control of his leg and hadn't moved it in 12 days, there had been a blood clot that formed. And by us lifting him up and putting him in that wheelchair, that blood clot became dislodged and shot straight to his lungs. I noticed my dad started acting different, and I brought it up to the nurse, and at first she dismissed it and just said, oh, he's probably just weak from being in the bed this long. But then my dad started taking these short breaths, and the breathing was different, and she noticed it. So she immediately started checking his blood pressure, and she could tell something was off, so she hit the panic button, and all the doctors started running into the room. And at first, they didn't seem to think it was that serious, but I know something's off, and I'm beginning to panic and feel like this thing is slipping away from me. My dad's starting to take these short breaths now. It's getting worse, and it just seems like he's spiraling down and down and down. And there's nothing I could do. I felt helpless because I knew this whole thing was out of my control. And it seemed like it took forever for the ambulance to get there. I heard the sirens from miles and miles away. Darkness began to cover the room. The emotional intensity began to rise. The fear, the worry, the panic. My grandmother's crying. My wife is running around crazy. My dad is barely breathing. Doctors and nurses are working on him, and I'm holding his hand and I'm saying, Daddy, hold on. Breathe, Daddy, breathe. I love you, Daddy. Hold on. Please, hold on. Just breathe. Just breathe. It's gonna be okay. Hold on, Daddy. I love you. But I knew this was different. This was the first time I had seen fear in his eyes in my whole life. And somehow, he was able to get out the words, I love you, son. I said, I love you too, Daddy. Hold on. Breathe, Daddy. Breathe. The paramedics get there, and they roll him out to the ambulance, and I get in there with him. And it's getting worse. It's progressing, and I just don't know how to handle it. I mean, how do you handle this? You can't do anything. I can't get in there. I can't fix it. All the times he had helped me, saved me, and in this moment of his need, I could do nothing. We get to the emergency room. They roll my daddy into a room. The paramedics hook him up, but there's no doctors in the room when we get there. So the paramedic stays with him. And my daddy's beginning to crash and get worse and worse and worse until the doctors come in and they rush me out of the room. And I take one last glance at the eyes. And I know the one thing a son never wants to know about his father. I know I haven't accepted it, but I know. I go into the bathroom there in the hospital. I go into the stall. I lock the door behind me. And I get on my knees right there on the floor. And I say, God, I know you can heal him, but your will, not mine. I had to say the prayer I didn't ever want to say. A few minutes later, the nurses ushered me and my family into this little side room, and we all sat there quiet, in tears, shaking and waiting for news on my daddy. I could hear down the hall the sound of a flatline. And we all know what that flatline means, but I could just hear it over and over, and it just kept ringing, and it didn't stop. They didn't cut it off. It just kept ringing. It seemed like for minutes after minute after minute, it just kept ringing. But I already knew what I didn't want to know. Finally, one of the doctors comes in the room, and it's like when there's bad news, they have to deliver it to you in stages. They don't want to give it all to you at one time because they know you can't handle it. So he comes in and he says, it's not looking good. Your dad's in bad shape. We might want to start thinking about quality of life and all this gibberish. And then he turns and goes back in my dad's room. And we're just sitting there all silent in his room, just praying, hoping, wishing, all the stuff that you do. But I already knew what I didn't want to know. The doctor eventually came back in and said, your dad is gone. And when I heard that, for 1 second, I remembered the prayer in the stall that I had prayed. I had this unbelievable peace come over me that could only have been from heaven. For 1 second, it just surrounded me and I felt totally at peace for 1 second. And then the whole world came crashing down on me. I fell to the ground and I had my first full-blown panic attack right there in that side room. I didn't even know what it was. I just thought I was about to die too, just like my daddy. I said, here's my grandmother worrying over here crying, and I'm about to die too. I never had any experience with panic attacks. I didn't know what this was. I'm exhausted, wore down from 12 days of worry and trying to carry something I was never meant to carry. I'm in denial. This can't be happening to me. I know this is not real. This is a dream. Let me wake up. I know this is not right. This is not how I had it planned. 15 minutes ago, everything was okay. No. Not my daddy. No. Billy Alsbrooks Sr., born July 20th, 1944, died Sunday, December 30th, 2007. You don't know how hard it is for me to tell you that story right there. But I wanted to open up to you, keep it real, and give you some background info as to how I got to doing what I'm doing now, and why I do what I do now with the intensity I do it with. 2 days after my dad died, that's when my ministry started. The hospital gave me the clothes my dad was wearing when he had his stroke. And searching for all kind of answers in that moment, like why this whole thing happened. I went through his pockets and found this note. And it was from an inmate. You see, my dad was an alcoholic. And he drank for about 30-something years of his life. But the last 15 years of his life, he had gotten sober. And he was going around to the jails, chairing the AA meetings for the inmates. He was sponsoring and helping these guys overcome their addictions, just like he had. But one of the inmates had put a note in his pocket. It said, at the next meeting, could you please bring in a Thompson Chain reference Bible? I've just received Christ and I want to go deeper in my studies. And if there's any way you can bring this book in, I'd really appreciate it. Now, I'd never even heard of a Thompson Chain reference Bible. I didn't know what that was, but I had some kind of urge on the inside of me to do that thing that my dad couldn't do. So I went to the Christian bookstore. I asked them for the book. They knew of it. I bought it. And I took it over to the jail. And I gave it to the sheriff. And I said, my dad used to come here. And they knew him. And I said, hey, this was something my dad wasn't able to do, was bring this guy this reference Bible. Could you please deliver it to him? And the sheriff said it was against policy, but he knew my dad and he knew what had happened. So he said he would make an exception in this case. Now, I never met the guy that I gave it to. I don't know what happened. I don't even know if he even got it. But looking back, I feel like that was a test. That God was saying, will you deliver my word to my people? Blessed and unstoppable. Success starts with putting the right things into your mind. And my new book, Blessed and Unstoppable, was strategically designed to align your mind with the laws of success. This curriculum will teach you the inner mechanics required to go from average to phenomenal. From living a life with limits to being blessed and unstoppable. As you follow this guide step by step, amazing breakthroughs will happen. New doors of opportunity will open, and favor will begin to chase you down. Blessed and Unstoppable is a 31-day devotional on the laws of success. This book will instigate the thought process and actions required to transform your life. Each day has a Bible verse, a teaching on that day's principle, a positive affirmation, a prayer for the day, self-assessment questions, success quotes, action steps, and a powerful inspirational message. Regardless of what field you're in, Blessed and Unstoppable is your blueprint for success. Get your copy at blessedandunstoppable.com. Also available on Amazon.